Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Coverings Connected in this afternoon's webinar, Trend Hacks, How to Spot Trends That Will Impact Your Business. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items. This program is AIA and IDCEC accredited for 1 CEU hour. Please check the chat screen for contact information to request your CEU. All attendees are in listen-only mode. You can submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions section of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will share with the presenter during the Q&A at the end of the presentation, getting to as many as time allows. If you are having problems connecting or any other issues, please often closing the window and starting a new window will fix the problem. If you are having problems with your computer audio, call the number on your invitation to listen via your phone. The audio pin for this session is 107# or hashtag. This session will be recorded and made available on the Coverings site after Coverings Connected. Don't miss all of the other great Coverings Connected opportunities available through coverings.com today and tomorrow. I would now like to introduce our wonderful presenter. James Dion is the founder and president of Dionco, Inc., an internationally known retail speaker and trainer and retail consultant. He has written Retail Sellin' Ain't Brain Surgery, It's Twice as Hard, Start, Run a Retail Business, and The Complete Idiot's Guide to Starting and Running a Retail Store. He has an MS in psychology and a PhD in industrial psychology, combined with over 30 years of retail experience working at Sears, Levi Strauss, and Gilmore. As a retail consultant, he has helped hundreds of retailers successfully reposition their retail business. Take it away, Jim.
Thanks, Ellie. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trend Hacks. And let's talk about trends. But first, I want to obviously talk about the elephant in the room, and that is what we're all going through right at the moment. And I would really hope that this presentation will give you a different perspective on looking at what we're going through, and also really, hopefully, position you to do some things while we're going through this, so that when we do get to that proverbial other side, you'll be a little bit ahead. You will be ready to, as we say, hit the ground running. And we don't even know whether we'll hit the ground crawling first. But anyway, you'll have some plans in place, and you'll have a really good understanding of possibly what that other side is going to look like. So let's talk about trends. What are they? Where do they come from? And really, why should I even care about trends in my business? So first question, what are trends? Okay, are they about fashion or entertainment? Are they about what's hot or popular or hip right at the moment? And by the way, on the screen, that's goat yoga, which has been for the last couple of years a really, believe it or not, hot trend that's happening out there in the world of yoga, and to have goats climbing on your back. Or, even this trend. And you probably have not heard about kitty currency. This is actual, Bitcoin, or it uses, matter of fact, the blockchain platform to trade in kitty currency, crypto kitty currency. Absolutely strange. Whether this one is truly a trend, or, as I'll talk about in a minute, a fad, I really don't know. So is it something brilliant or worthwhile? Or is it something that unlocks a new service or an existing consumer need, desire, want, or value? That's the question that we really want to get to. And ultimately, it's about all of these, all of the above. And what they are all based on, and what trends are based on, and I want you to think about this, remember it, is they're ultimately based on consumer wants, needs, and desires. Remember that. All trends can be traced back to humans' wants, needs, and desires. Still a little bit confused? Well, a trend is a social process in which style or taste changes. So people were a certain way. For example, we're all locked down right at the moment. and so clearly our style and tastes are changing right at this moment. And by the way, it's probably not a bad idea to mention this right at this particular point. People have asked me over the last couple of weeks, Jim, is this going to radically change our consumer going forward? Is this going to have a profound impact on their psyche? Is it going to be a different world on that other side? And my answer back to that question is pretty much no. That yes, what we are going through right now is a lot of things are changing in human beings' lives when we are locked down, and that's causing a lot of just profound problems for people and for companies. And I don't have to tell anybody on this call that we are under a huge amount of stress, but also understand that human beings are incredibly resilient. And think about, and yes, this is no 9/11 because it's a very different kind of experience that we are going through. But what I want to reassure you is that human beings are resilient, and on the other side, and it may take a year, two, or three, but human beings will bounce back. This will become a memory for us. For some of us, a horrible memory. For others, a very vivid memory. But human beings will get back to doing what we were doing 3 months ago. That world will return. Our short-term memory of this is very powerful. And so for the next, yes, couple of months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, it's going to have an impact. But beyond that, we will heal. We will go back to being what we are. So some things are long lived, and some of these trends and changes will continue to impact people for some time. But once again, other things will come in and will change that, and we will adapt to that over the next couple of years. And so there's nothing really mysterious about what I want to talk about in trends. They don't just come from out of the blue. They don't come from, the Mars or, someplace in the solar system. They come from human beings and the way that we behave. And it really is about a social process. And I'd like to take you back, and many of you have seen, you probably have forgotten about this pyramid, but I'm certain that just about everybody on this call has seen this pyramid at some point in their life. And quite frankly, Abraham Maslow was absolutely brilliant when he made this observation about human beings and what motivates people, because that's really the heart and soul of Maslow's needs hierarchy is what really causes people to behave the way they do. And Maslow, as you remember from learning about this, began with what he called base physiological needs. And these are the needs that we absolutely need for survival. If these are not met, nothing else is going to happen. So if we can't get food, and I mean food to the point of starvation, if we can't get water, if we can't get air, if we can't get, any of these things that are necessary for our physical survival, then nothing else matters. If you're in the middle of the desert and you haven't had a drink in 24 hours, you are not about to start debating with somebody the psychological impact of this or that. Your whole existence is about getting a drink. So once those needs are met, and they have been met for most people in America and Canada and North America and first world countries at this point, then safety becomes a real issue. And safety, once again, we are concerned about things that could hurt us. Once that's satiated, we then get concerned about love and belonging. We care about what others think of us. We care about relationships, about families. For example, after 9/11, we were all, as an entire country, knocked down to the safety level. We all worried, when was the next attack coming? But we very quickly moved up into love and belonging. We very quickly wanted to redevelop relationships. And I think you're seeing some of that, a lot of that happening right now as people shelter in place. Very much from a safety, we are way back. We're driven right back into that safety need area right at the moment. And love and belonging is becoming a real key component of that. Reaching out to people, touching base with a lot of old friends and checking in on people. And then Maslow said, once that's satiated, then you move up to esteem, where you really then begin to care about yourself. And again, because if you look at this hierarchy and you think about it, and from a trend perspective, you're going to understand that safety and love and belonging is going to be here probably for a while, because that's what consumers are needing in this esteem level, considering and concerning myself. That's going to probably be 1 or 2 or 3 years out, much less self-actualization. Although we are seeing clearly on the I guess the motivation of a lot of our healthcare workers. Yes, they're certainly around safety for themselves, but they're also around self-actualization. It's amazing how many doctors and nurses and hospital staff and even retail sales associates in stores are really doing things for the good of everybody. And so self-actualization, they've almost jumped above esteem, and they're not doing it for themselves, they're doing it for other people. So think about this pyramid, and you can download this presentation and go back and print this slide out and use it to think about where your staff is, where you are, where your customers are at, and when they're likely to be ready to go up to the next needs. But these needs, that pyramid has been around. I think I first Maslow first published it, gosh, 60, 70 years ago. So we've known about it for a long time. So how can that be responsible for new trends? And the answer is that there's always a way to unlock something, to go back and look at one of those trends, because safety today means different than safety did 3 or 4 months ago. And belongingness and love today means something different than it did a couple of months ago. So these needs really can be interpreted in a very different way. And so breakthroughs in technology will always lead to a different way of interpreting this. For example, a couple of years ago, the whole like on Facebook, that was really totally responding to belongingness and love. It was your way of saying to somebody, hey, I really like what you posted, I really like what you did. Another one we're seeing, and believe me, this isn't occurring right now, but it was a couple of months ago in New York City, meditation mornings, where people would get together and meditate together. And again, around belongingness and love. A very recent innovation, this particular one from about 2 weeks ago, Bolt Amsterdam, which is a floral company in Amsterdam, again responding to what's happening right at the moment, the virus. All the tulips in Holland were in danger of just being plowed under. And so this particular florist, Bolt Florists in Amsterdam, started offering uh, tulips that you could pay whatever you wanted, and the shipping was free. And so what they were encouraging is, rather than just plowing these under, bring some joy into your life. So tying into the zeitgeist, to what's happening in the world right at the moment, is also part of a trend. And understand, when we're dealing with trends, and this is the hard one for people to understand, it's not about you. Trends are about your consumer, and they may be, and often are, very different from you. They are coming from a different place. They are, yes, different people. And also, as a statistician, I always tell people it's very difficult to predict a single event, because when you're trying to predict a single event, no matter how many inputs you have to that single event, it becomes just about impossible. But when you are predicting mass events and you have massive amounts of data, then your predictions become a little bit more possible. So when we get down to predicting how individuals are going to behave in a store or around a product, it becomes very difficult. But when we're talking about groups of individuals, it becomes a little bit easier. But trends are not about you or your specific tastes. And so we're going to talk about a couple of different kinds of trends. There's macro trends, consumer trends, and there's industry trends. And macro are those trends that are way up there. They're influencing pretty much everything. And these trends are certainly social, and certainly we're seeing that the social trends today of social distancing and the impact that that's having. We're seeing technological trends that are really coming in. You probably are kicking yourself for not buying Zoom stock a couple of months ago, because technology is really having an impact on consumers and how they stay in touch. We're talking about economic trends, environmental, political, and yeah, global health today. Although I would argue global health is part of all of those trends. So all of these things are the big 30,000 foot view trends, and most of us are kind of aware of those, and understanding how they impact our consumer. Color is a really good example of this. It's a global trend, and it's a trend that really does impact quite a few people. And the amazing thing is that, color trends don't just happen. So for example, you can see on the screen the color of the year 2020 is classic blue. Now, to me, talk about predicting the future. I mean, it was it serendipity? What was it? That color was chosen a couple of years ago. In other words, the people at Pantone don't, decide on January 1st of 2020 what the color is going to be for 2020. It's based on a tremendous amount of research, brainstorming, really looking at and thinking about what's happening in the world, and then they come up with this color, often anywhere from 8 to 12 to 14 months in advance. So 8 to 12 to 14 months ago they chose classic blue for this year. And you have to understand that a lot of times the colors come out of what is called the zeitgeist of the times. What's happening in the world? Again, that kind of global perspective. What are people generally feeling in the world? And so understanding that, we also then begin to understand that not only color but sociology relates to trends too. And I can't, I guess, emphasize it enough that we have to be very tuned into what is happening and what our customers, and I'll mention this further on in the presentation, what our customers are experiencing and seeing out there. What is happening in their lives on a daily basis? What are they seeing on television? What are they hearing in music videos? What are they seeing when they go into clothing stores? What is their take on fashion? All of those things. For example, after 2008, there was a moment of gray. In other words, gray was the absolute color of the year in 2008. So what happened in that year? Again, they were almost prescient in predicting it, because clearly that was the beginning of the meltdown, and consumers were not really interested in really super bright colors. And brown, traditionally linked to earth and dirt, today brown is all about, yeah, cocoa, and it's about chocolate, and it's about warmth. It's a whole different perspective of this particular color. And in 2016, a lot of you will remember that millennial pink was the absolute hot color of the year. Yeah, you call it rose quartz or serenity blue. Uh, but it was basically millennial pink that was the hot color. So why do you think classic blue was chosen for 2020? Again, did they have a crystal ball? And look at that image. It was almost, and this is right off of their website, by the way. It was almost social distancing or reaching out to somebody. No, they didn't have a website. I'm sorry, they didn't have a crystal ball, but what they did have was an understanding that 2020 was going to be a very upsetting year. It was going to be a year, particularly in North America, but also with Brexit, and Europe. The consumers were going to be feeling very, very, very discombobulated, I guess is a good word. Or if you're British, gobsmacked. They were not going to be feeling really well. And so this very classic blue, this soothing color, psychologically classic blue, is really supposed to lower your blood pressure, put you at ease, and just get you to kind of chill out. Once again, they were looking at the trend of what was likely to happen in 2020, not even knowing what was really coming in 2020. And again, moving into consumer trends, how do these then impact? And this particular trend, we've been having a little bit of trouble sharing videos, and I'm just going to pause this here. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to go back. Hold on one second. I'm just going to go back. I want to talk about this video. This is a video that is looking at technology that really impacts a consumer. And what is I find fascinating about this particular video and this particular technology, and by the way, we can send you the video afterwards, although it is out there in the public domain. This video is about a uh, store in Boston. As you'll see, you may not be able to hear the video, and I won't let it run all the way through. I'll just let you look at a little bit of it. It's about a restaurant that are is using robots to cook the food. And so when you think, or when I look at this video today versus when I first looked at it about 6, 8 months ago, very, very different feeling. And today I'm looking at this video going, wow, this may be, on the other side, a way of ensuring people that if their food is not touched at all by human beings, that it's probably virus free, and you don't have to worry about anything at all. And also the way you order it yourself on a touch screen, you can socially distance and disinfect those screens. You could probably even do it by voice. So here's a technology that was a consumer trend a year ago, and now may have profound impact as we go forward.
At Splash, we set out to create a new style of restaurant. We wanted to bring amazing meals to people at a more affordable price point. Each meal is made to order in 3 minutes or less, starting at $7.50. When we were 4 MIT students, we couldn't really find a decent meal at an affordable price point. As robotics-obsessed engineers, we set out to create a new, efficient way of cooking food. From our humble starts in our fraternity basement, we developed a prototype that really sort of proved we could build something that can create delicious, high-quality meals. Our woks cook by constantly tumbling your food, which provides a really nice and even sear. They're heated with induction, and we have temperature control to perfectly cook your meal every time. When we had the robotics nailed down, we knew we needed some culinary excellence to really bring this restaurant.
So anyway, I apologize for the sound if you weren't able to hear it completely, but you're again more than welcome to download that video. Once again, an incredible consumer trend, and it started from a need, as you may or you may not have heard the founders talk about. What they really wanted was to deliver healthy, delicious, inexpensive food to their consumers. And once again, a trend that was growing out of, or if you, I don't care whether you're talking Warby Parker or any new concept that's out there, Uber, Lyft, whatever. It's based upon a consumer need, and that need is what drives the people to do it. And then when we look at industry trends, what's happening, for example, in the stone and tile industry. Over the last couple of years, we've seen botanicals come in as a really important trend. Once again, looking at where the consumer is at. This is out of a 2018 report. Earth tones, again, looking at where the customer is. Focus on Mother Nature. We're all concerned about the planet. And so earth tones are relating to that particular zeitgeist of the moment. Also, other cultures, the whole idea of globalism. And yes, maybe we've moved a little away from that in the US recently, but globalism is still out there and people are still interested in other cultures. And yes, nostalgia. I really have a feeling that nostalgia is going to become a real big issue if you think about it as we come out of this pandemic. All of us are going to think about, and I don't know about you, every time now that I watch a TV program and I see people standing together or hugging each other, I go, oh my goodness, what are they doing? Uh, We all have a very different way of looking at that now, and we all have a very, nostalgic look at, gee, the way life was before the pandemic. And so I think nostalgia may come in and think about it as a trend possibly going forward. And also trends that affect a brand strategy. This is Zappos that got in very early on to setting up these kiosks in airports around the country where women could go in and nurse their baby so that they didn't have to do it out in public. So once again, tying your brand to a consumer need is also a really good way of applying a trend. So still a little bit unclear. Let's have a little bit of a test here. See if you can spot a trend. Uh, IKEA has been a real leader in augmented reality, and I've been, by the way, telling retailers for the last 3 or 4 years, you have to get involved in augmented reality, particularly if you are in home furnishings or in tile or stone or any kind of floor covering. Augmented reality is an absolute necessity today. Consumers are more and more demanding it. IKEA was a real pioneer in augmented reality. And so they literally give you the idea using your own phone, they give you the ability to position product in your home. So you can see how a couch would look, you can see what anything would look like. There are a number of flooring retailers who are doing the same today. They're allowing a consumer to hold their phone, point it at their kitchen, point it at their living room, point it at their bedroom, and have a look at what a different tile would look like, different pattern, different color, whatever. So AR is very, very big, and it's happening out there. The Golden Globes this year, back when we, believe it or not, actually had them, their menu was fully vegan. Again, very, very different. Never did that before. And just recently, in the last couple of weeks, Engel and Volkers are offering virtual museum tours in a number of museums around the world. This particular one is in Venice, Venezia. And again, why was this one chosen? Or why did the company get into this a couple of weeks ago? Yeah, you already know the answer. This was directly related to COVID-19. So consumers were not able to go into these museums, so they brought the museum to the consumer. So it begs the question, which trend is influencing each one of these? Well, I already kind of gave away the one in the middle. Uh, Clearly IKEA is really impacted by technology, the consumer's desire to really not make a mistake, so they want to see what the end product is. So that's where IKEA is coming from. The Golden Globes, the whole vegan thing, is very much relating to the whole green movement that's occurring, that we really don't want to slaughter animals anymore, we want to have a plant-based diet, all of those issues around health. And Engel and Volkers, the 360 museum tours, very much related to safety and security, that the consumer is worried about going into those spaces. As a matter of fact, they can't even go into those spaces, but they're still worried about it. So you might say, well, it's just like market research, isn't it, Jim? That understanding these trends, this is really about market research. Well, not really, because market research is a rear view mirror view of your customer. It's just like looking in a rear view mirror. It tells you what you've just went through. It tells you what the consumer already did. And by the way, that's important data to have, to know when your consumers purchased, what they purchased, the price point that they purchased, color analysis, all of those things that data is really important, but is, again, it's backward looking, it's in the past. It doesn't tell you what's occurring into the future. And that's what we need to know. And what I love, you recognize that guy on the screen, arguably an absolute genius. But he said, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. That's why I never rely on market research. Our task is to read things that are not yet on the page. Whew. Probably summing up this entire presentation in one slide. But the question is, how do you learn to read things that are not yet on the page? All of this stuff we're going through right now, very frightening. Some of us don't even know if our businesses are going to continue 2 or 3 or 4 months down the road. We don't even know if we can weather the storm that is already enveloping us. Having said that, we need to get ready for what is on the other side and thinking about how do I position my company, position my products to really, again, be available for that consumer when they're ready to come back. Once again, understand trends don't apply to all people. It's not, either or this and that. What is one trend to one person is not a trend to another. So you could put somebody on a beach. You can put me on a beach in a tent, and it's hell for me. But for other people, it's a holiday. You can put somebody on a cruise ship, and it's a holiday. Well, maybe not so much today. Maybe it is hell for everybody today. Uh, but understand that consumers interpret things differently. And so whenever you're coming up with something, you're not going to hit a home run. Not every consumer is going to react to it the same. So there are going to be people who don't agree with it. And one skill doesn't kill, or one new trend doesn't kill the old one. I can remember back in 1999, I was at a conference for the National Retail Federation, and a brand new online retailer. I will never forget this guy. He stood at a podium almost like Khrushchev did during the Cold War. And he pounded the podium and he looked out. He was with boo.com, by the way. And he looked out at the audience and he said, all of you are dead. All of you retailers will cease to exist in the next 2 years. And all the retailers I can remember were just trembling. Oh my goodness, this guy's probably right. By the way, 6 months later and $42 million that he burned through, they went out of business. So we all realized that online did not destroy brick and mortar. Even 6 months ago, 3 months ago, when we were all worried about, and we continue to be worried clearly about brick and mortar right at the moment because, there's not a lot of it open beyond grocery stores and some other essential businesses. But online really didn't kill brick and mortar, nor will it kill brick and mortar. What will happen is they will complement, and they are complementing each other. So a lot of consumers now, they can't go into a store, they're ordering their products online. And so it becomes a complement. And when brick and mortar opens back up again, consumers will go back into brick and mortar because even 3 months ago, well over 85% of all of the dollars spent in the United States was spent in a brick and mortar store. That's right, 85% of all. Some categories, not so much. Books and music, 90% bought online. But you look at groceries, you look at tiles, you look at so many different products. The vast majority of them were still purchased in a brick and mortar store. So how do you spot a trend? How do what is the next big thing that's going to be coming after this pandemic? What's the world going to look like in November, in December, in next February, next March, a year from now? How do you spot it? Well, we would suggest that you really need to seek your inspiration from outside of your industry. As we say, get out of your silo. Understand that the consumer that you are selling to is not just buying your product. They have a life, okay? And in that life, they do many, many things. They go to many stores, they go to many websites, and yes, for a week or 2 or 3 of their lives, they may be consumed about a kitchen remodel or about building a new home or whatever, but that is very, very temporary. And also they're clearly right now consumed about, being locked up inside, which you know, if they're staring at that same kitchen every day, maybe there's some pent up demand being built. In other words, they're not so happy with sheltering in place because their place is not particularly enjoyable to them. So that may cause or lead a real boom in home improvement 6, 8 months from now, where people say, you know, if this is going to happen again, I'm not going to be in the same house with that terrible kitchen, with that terrible rec room, with that terrible family room, whatever. They may want to really significantly upgrade and change where they are cocooning, as it were. So customers shop horizontally. They get their expectations from many different businesses. So it's the Walmart they shop in, it's the gas station they go to get their gas and their Doritos. It is all kinds of places, and it's online. It's shopping at IKEA, seeing what's available there. You know, one of the fastest technologies ever to be adapted, by the way, by retailers in North America was the debit card. And I can remember when that happened. It happened first in Canada, by the way. Canada was 3 to 4 years ahead of the United States in adapting debit cards. But in the US, with retailers who are always hesitant to invest any money in technology, to put a debit card machine in their store, that was almost crazy until the gas station started accepting debit cards. And then all of a sudden consumers said, hey, I want to use this everywhere and anywhere. And retailers, if they wanted to get customers money, started taking debit cards. And that technology was literally from almost no retailers to well over 99% of 98% of retailers within 2 years. No technology has ever been adopted like that in the retail space. But understand that consumers absolutely demanded that. So looking for that next consumer trend out there, we have to look to other industries. What's happening, and how do we do that? We look at, not by asking them, by the way, not by market research, not by observing them or looking at what they've spent money on or anything. It's looking at what they are paying attention to now. So looking at the innovations that they're lavishing their attention on now, and that will give you a indication. So looking at, yes, family, friends. If you don't really understand millennials, then you need to get in touch with some of your nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren, whatever, and you need to start engaging them and asking them, how are you spending your day? What are you doing? You know, and particularly, yes, during the pandemic, or although I would argue that an awful lot of our behaviors that we are exhibiting right now are not going to totally translate into the other side. In other words, I would not expect consumers to be locking down, and this is going to be the new normal. Where, you know, believe me, in 3 years, 2 years, we're going to be hugging again. You know, anybody who tries to tell you, well, the elbow bump or whatever is going to become, you know, the way that human beings are going to be from now on, no, then you don't know human beings. We will get back to hugging. There will become a vaccine. There will, you know, we will get through this. And so when we do, we need to look at what people are lavishing their attention on now. And now means not only today, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, paying attention as we transition out of this, seeing what consumers are doing. And again, you need to look at what people are using. For example, what we call innovation transfer. The whole idea of using Google Maps, using mapping for helping rideshare to pick you up, was an absolute brilliant marriage of technologies. Likely, well, it would never have occurred if we did not have really good mapping technology and the ability to use a GPS in a phone. So all of these technologies of GPSs in the phone, mapping technology, and by the way, they're you know, you've read probably in South Korea, they have the incredible ability to track people's cell phones and be able to tell you when you have come close to somebody who has been diagnosed with COVID-19. And those applications, by the way, are available here in America. It's just that most Americans are so afraid of privacy issues that they don't want to download them and actually use that technology so that we can social distance with a little bit of technology behind it. But anyway, these technologies move from one industry to the other. And so we have to look and see, what are people using on their phone? How are they using it? How might this translate into what I should be delivering to the customers? And again, look at the basic human needs, because innovators and innovations really do focus on solving a problem that the customer has. And this one, the one touch service button, I think a lot of Americans would love to have this right now for their toilet paper. By the way, Amazon pioneered these, and they've since gone from the physical, the actual button you see on the screen there, to now virtual ones. I don't even think you can get the physical ones anymore. But the Amazon, the whole dash wand and the whole technology, although I'm sure the one at the bottom there, the Durex dash button, that might be being used a lot today. I don't know. We'll have to see how many babies come out in the next 9 months. Anyway, this is a trend that it literally, you know, just took over for an awful lot of online shopping. It just made it so easy and simple to replenish stuff that I needed on a frequent basis. And also understand what we call the cycle of trends, that eventually every trend runs its course. And this early market that you see on the screen, the early adopters and the innovators, by the way, you don't want them as a consumer because it's 3% of the population, and they're fickle and they're absolutely crazy people. I'm not even sure you want the early adopters. They're about 14, 15% of the population. And these are the people that take something from the innovators and they really get on board with it. Then we have what is called the chasm, and that's that red line there. Not everything moves from the early adopters into the early majority. The early adopters, by the way, the innovators, early adopters, often, if it falls through the chasm there, falls off, we call it a fad. It was something that was really, it was adapted or adopted by a few people for a while, but then it fizzled out. When it gets into the early majority, that's where money is made, and the late majority. So the vast majority of the population are out there in those two big lumps. And then the laggards, those are people who buy it or use it or whatever years and years later. And sometimes it's really hard, as they say in fashion, you see somebody in wide leg pants today or bell bottoms, and you say, wait a minute, is this an early adopter or is it a laggard? Sometimes you really don't know, if it's particularly if it's fashion. They cycle through this thing all the time. So understand that not everything that you see or you think of in a trend is going to jump that chasm and get into where we really can make money out of it and where it will really build our business. So why pay attention to trends? As I said in the beginning of the presentation, when we come out the other side, the businesses that are still standing, the businesses that have weathered this storm, are the ones that are going to have the opportunity to capitalize on a tremendous amount of pent-up demand. It's not all going to happen on a Monday. The phones aren't going to start ringing and everything else. It's going to be a really rebuilding process. But if you are even a month or 2 months or 3 months ahead of your competitors, if you identify a trend before they do and you begin to adapt to it and get ready for it, that is the holy grail. And yes, trends mean money, an awful lot of money. And take, color. Color is absolutely critical within trends, because something, if it's the wrong color, consumers will simply walk away from it. But if it is the color of the day, and that's why manufacturers of just about any product out there are always looking at what consumers are looking at when it comes to color. And if you spend the time, and you don't need to spend money on this, by the way, look at Pantone, look at Premier Vision, look at all the color trending information you can get. That's important information to have, particularly in tile and stone, because it is highly related to color and the customer's choice. Once again, a video, you may not be able to hear it as well as I would like, but once again, you can download this video. We've taken a clip out of The Devil Wears Prada, and this is a clip about when I talked about the blue in well, I didn't talk about, I'm sorry, I should have talked about the blue in 1999. In 1999, cerulean blue, which they're talking about in this video, was the absolute, I mean, it was the color of the year. And why did they have cerulean blue? And again, a blue in 1999? Because we were facing the year 2000. And everybody thought every computer was going to blow up and the world was going to end on January 1st, 2000. And there was a lot of angst in the country and the world in 1999. And cerulean blue became the color for that angst to calm people down. And in this video clip, you really get to hear the description of why color is so important.
Hey, Jim, we can't hear it.
Okay. I will end the video because people are having trouble hearing it. Anyway, just to give you a quick description, she talks about those belts being the same color because she can't perceive the difference in those colors. And she has then read the Riot Act on how important color is to the fashion world and how deciding even a different shade can have a profound impact. So how do I apply all of these things? How do I take the trends that I'm trying to see, I'm trying to consider, and what do I do with them? Well, first and foremost, they're used to come up with a new vision. They're used to come up with, what is my company going to look like 2 years from now, 5 years from now? And yes, long-term planning today, we used to have 10-year plans, and even 5-year plans are have gone out of vogue. And I'm not talking about a financial plan. I'm not talking about a financial plan for 3 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out, the way we used to do them. No, I'm talking about a vision. What is my company going to look like in 2025? You need to ask yourself that question. What is our vision? And you can't do this by yourself. Ideally, you do it with your team, with a staff of people. And again, if you're on this presentation, I would encourage you to download the presentation. We have it in a PDF format. You can run in full slide mode. That's also recorded. We would encourage you to also look at that recording. Have your staff look at it, and have today probably a Zoom meeting about it, or you know, a conference call, but not just one. Have a plan for regularly discussing at least once a month, where do we see the company in 2023, 2025? We also use trends to identify new business concepts. Huge opportunity to possibly change your business model, to look at different concepts, different ways of selling, different ways of installing, different ways of doing business with your customers. And yes, new products, new services, new experiences. How do people, and what will they be looking like in 2 years? How will consumers want to buy new flooring? How will they want to buy new tiles for their kitchen, for their backsplashes, for anything in the home? Are they going to change the way that they shop? You need to start talking about these things because I don't have a definitive answer for you. If I had a perfect crystal ball, I obviously wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'd be on my own beach in a private island somewhere. And also, trends are going to affect your marketing and your advertising and your public relations. So, using trends and having an idea of where the consumer is going to impact pretty much, it should impact everything that you do going forward. It's got to have a seat at the table when you talk about what we're going to be like 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years down the road. And it may lead to a new logo. And these are actual, by the way, logos that are out there today, and they're brilliant. Look at McDonald's. You talk about a social distancing. I mean, that is absolutely brilliant. And clearly, Starbucks, that is astounding. And even Coca-Cola, staying apart is the best way to stay united. These are ways that companies are tying into the immediate zeitgeist. But also remember that 2 years from now, when we look back at these, we'll have a good chuckle about them, but they will not be profoundly impacting the future of these particular businesses. They are relating to a occurrence that's happening right now, but I don't believe that they have really long term. And so I'd like to really, and again, the old stay home, stay safe, uh, ask you to consider this presentation, to print it out, to distribute it to your team, to have the discussion of what 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now is going to look like. And nobody will have the perfect answer to that, but there will be a lot of different inputs on that. And that's where great trend ideas come from, is the input of your team, getting them to understand, how do we think about trends? What are our friends doing? What are our family doing? What are they likely to be concerned about once we don't have to worry about not hugging anymore? Once we don't have to worry about going to a movie or going to a restaurant? What do you think people are going to be like as they come out of this? With the understanding that human beings are very, very resistant to change. And yes, this has been a really horrific experience for a lot of consumers, particularly those who have lost somebody to COVID-19. And it will change a lot of lives, but human beings themselves, again, I'll say it, are resilient. And in 2 or 3 years, they are going to come back. Also, I'd share with you, take some time to bake some cookies. Doubletree, the Hilton Hotel, has just released their famous Doubletree cookie recipe. And that's not a bad place to be today, is having some cookies to chill out. So once again, thank you. Coverings.com. You can download the, I'm sure they'll give you the way of get to this recording. And now I'd just like to, see what kind of questions are out there, if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Jim. Always a wonderful presentation. I do have a couple of questions, and people can still ask questions in the pane, and we'll try to get to a few of them before we have to depart. But first up, will hygiene and safety become a permanent trend?
Really good question. I don't believe so, no. Once again, the whole concept of Maslow's hierarchy is, once a trend has been satiated, it's been met, then it no longer becomes prepotent. It is no longer prepotent. In other words, we don't really care about it. Yeah, I think habits will change. We'll probably wash our hands a little bit more every time we come home, but I do not believe that hand sanitizer, for example, for the next probably 6 months to a year, will become a staple. Every store will have to have a sanitizing device within their store. Within 2 years, I really don't see that. I think they're going to start, getting some spider webs on them, cobwebs on them, because they're not going to be used that frequently. Once again, as humans, once we get through this, our short-term memory is going to, forget about it. And I don't believe that hygiene will be a super big issue. It doesn't mean, by the way, that we shouldn't push hygiene as being a real reason, for example, to have tile over carpet or over wood, that tile and stone. I've never seen an operating room in my life that had carpet in it. they're they're always a surface that can be sterilized, and that may be just ongoing a reminder to a customer, for example.
Okay, great. You had spoken about asking your perimeter industries, what are you paying attention to? How do you find out this information? Email, LinkedIn, uh, how does that work for perhaps the tile and stone industry?
It really is doing, first of all, something that people should be doing, and I've told them for a couple of years now. Set up Google alerts for different topics that you're interested in. Always, always, always always asking staff, customers, just acquaintances, whatever, asking questions about what they're doing today. What apps do you love on your phone? What are you doing? I have been begging retailers for the last year or two to download the AR kit from Apple. If you have an Apple iPhone, and even if you have an Android today, there are a lot of augmented reality applications. Download them, begin to use them, see how your customers are using them, see how they could be integrated into your business. Trends are happening everywhere. Look at Netflix. Look at what people are watching today, not only when they're locked down, but also continue to look at as we go forward. What are people looking at on YouTube? Think about the consumer's passions. What is really engaging them, and that will lead you to an understanding of that trend, which will lead you to, does this make sense, and how could it make sense in my business? And not all trends are going to make sense in your business.
And sort of dovetailing from that, do you have a particular augmented reality app that you recommend that perhaps is not very expensive?
Oh, I mean, all the apps are free. I mean, that's the amazing thing about them. Particularly, I mean, to get used, you have to look at IKEA, because once again, I believe what they have done is absolutely spectacular. So download the IKEA app. When you search for apps in the App Store in either Android or the iPhone store, just simply put in AR, and you will be presented with just tons and tons of applications. Download a few of them, play with them, see how they're used, and then think about and understand that other consumers are using these every day. So how are they going to begin to expect to see this in my company?
Great. And our final question, do you think digital presentations will take over from face-to-face beyond this year?
No, no. That's another, do I think that Zoom is a long-term investment? Probably not. I believe that we will go back to going to work. We will go back to going into brick and mortar stores. We will go back to offices. We will go back to meetings, because just as many of you have experienced, you can read an email on the screen and it's completely different when you print it out. I think everybody has come to that understanding that we still don't know in brain research why that is that way, but there are things in the world of the electronic world that as human beings we miss. And it's almost as if we have these little, what I call blind spots. And it's not just typos, but sometimes it's the meaning of a phrase or whatever. And I think anybody who's been participating in Zoom meetings for the last couple of weeks will know what I'm saying, that it's still, yeah, it's okay for now, but it's not the way going forward that I believe human beings are going to want to do business.
Well, somebody in the meetings industry, I hope that is the case. So Jim, thank you again for sharing with us today. Thank you to everybody who attended and who has been attending Coverings Connected. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation. It's short, I promise, and we would appreciate if you would complete it and provide your feedback. Coverings 2021 will take place April 13th through 16th in Orlando, Florida. So look for more information on that in the coming months. And on behalf of Coverings Connected and our wonderful presenter, Jim, thank you so much for joining today. We hope to see you back at some other sessions, and please stay safe and stay healthy.
Thanks, Ellie.